Please be seated. Good morning. We're back on the record with case number 12CF1083A, State versus George Zimmerman. Grace, this was an exhibit from yesterday. And are we ready to bring in our next potential juror?
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, do you have an inquiry for the defendant?
Oh, I do. Before we do that, thank you for reminding me. Mr. Zimmerman, if you'll please stand up, sir. You were present yesterday, all day yesterday, when we were going through the individual questioning of the potential jurors. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
And before that, did you have an opportunity to review with your attorneys the actual questionnaires that they filled out?
Yes, Your Honor.
And did you engage in discussions with your attorneys, those that they wanted to dismiss from the general questionnaire and those that they wanted to dismiss from after the voir dire?
Yes, Your Honor.
And are you in agreement with the decisions that you have come to with your attorneys, that your attorneys announced in the courtroom?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Now we can start with the next juror.
Your Honor, he is in ad code 50.
Please be seated. Good morning, sir. You are now known as E50, Juror E50, and the attorneys are going to ask you some questions about the questionnaire you filled out on Monday morning, and we're going to start with Mr. De La Uranda. Okay.
May it please the court. Good morning, sir.
Morning.
As Judge Nelson indicated, we're limited in this part of the jury selection process and asking questions about what you filled out, that is publicity and hardship. And so I wanted to delve into that if I could. You've notated on your form that what you had heard, only what you heard from the TV or newspaper.
Yeah.
Is that correct? In terms of the TV, was it local or national?
With local. I don't
Okay.
watch with TV.
Okay. And do you recall local in terms of what stations you would have seen the
I
coverage?
usually watch Channel 2 for the weather and the news.
Okay. And then the newspaper, is that the Orlando Sentinel?
Yes.
Okay. Did you first become aware of the case in time when it happened back in February of 2012?
Just through the paper or
Okay.
sometime on TV.
And did you continue to follow it throughout the progress of the case up to now?
No, sir.
Okay. Tell me as best you can recall when you first became aware of the case, what you became aware of, what media exposure you had, and what I'm asking you is what you remember about the case.
Not much. That there was an incident and it showed up on the newspaper and the TV.
I'm sorry.
It showed up in the newspaper and the TV,
Okay.
and that there were some problems with crowds. That's all I remember.
Okay. So that there was an incident and then problems with crowd?
Yes.
Okay. In terms of when you referred to incident, was there any more specifics that you can recall hearing on TV about it? Let me kind of ask a specific question. Do you remember seeing any photographs relating to the case?
The ones in the newspaper.
Okay. Do you remember what the photographs were of?
Of Mr. Zimmerman and the young man, Mr. Martin.
Okay. Do you remember the photograph of Mr. Zimmerman, what it looked like at this time?
Do I remember what it looked like then?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. How about the young man? And when you say young man, you're talking about Trayvon Martin?
Yes.
Okay. You remember what his photograph looked like?
Typical teenage boy.
Okay. All right. Anything remarkable about either of the photographs that you can recall at this time?
No.
Okay. Do you remember any other photographs related to the case that you would have seen in the newspaper or on TV?
That's all.
Okay. Do you remember any other type of evidence, you know, whether they be recordings or interviews or any type of court proceedings? Do you remember anything about the case, hearing it on TV or seeing it in the newspaper, reading about it?
If I did, I wouldn't even be interested in it. So yeah.
Okay. So you didn't really follow it that closely?
No, I'm retired, so I don't get too involved in it.
Okay. You mentioned you were retired, and we'll ask you some further questions at a later time about that. But, so you have more time, I guess, at home, or do you do other stuff that keeps you busy?
Well, I'm a golfer, but
Okay.
I have a daughter that lives with me with a 4.5-year-old son, so I stay
So
pretty
that
busy
keeps
with
you
that.
busy then?
Yeah.
Okay, so you didn't spend a lot of time in terms of watching TV or reading about this case?
No, I'm an outdoor person.
All right. You mentioned, in terms of the case, that there was other activity associated with the case that you recall reading about, or do you remember anything about that at all? Nothing at all?
The only activity I saw other was the crowds that formed
Okay.
afterwards.
Okay. What do you remember about the crowds?
Just what I saw on the TV, or someone said, or showed on the TV.
Okay. Did you form any impressions as a result of observing on TV that there was crowds here in our community?
No.
I gather by the way, when you answered the question, that you had not formed an opinion as to the guilt or innocence of the defendant, Mr. Zimmerman, is that correct?
No.
Okay. And the reason I asked is because that was one of the questions, and the follow-up question was, if you had formed an opinion, can you set it aside? And obviously, you never even formed an opinion, so you don't have to even set it
No.
aside. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. You understand that the law requires jurors, in order to arrive at a decision, to only make their decision on what happens in the courtroom. In other words, where all parties are present, the defendant, the state on behalf of Trayvon Martin, or the case, prosecuting the case, and obviously the court. You understand that?
Yes.
Can you do that?
Yes.
Okay. Distinguish, if you could, in terms of the coverage from TV to newspaper. Did you see a distinction between them, or were they pretty similar in their coverage? Was one slanted one way and the other one slanted another way, as best you can remember?
As to what?
As to one side or the other, was it, what I'm trying to show is, did you detect any kind of bias on the part of the media, either in the newspaper or on TV, in favor of, Trayvon Martin, or in favor of Mr. Zimmerman?
No.
So you thought it was fair?
Well, I don't weigh too much on the news, people.
You don't, on the news at all? Okay.
It depresses me.
I'm sorry?
It depresses me,
Okay.
so I just stay away from it.
So you try to stay away from news at all. Now, I apologize if I already asked you this, but you didn't watch anything in terms of national news, either on Fox or CNN or CBS or ABC?
I usually watch only sports or movies on TV. I don't watch,
ESPN?
I don't watch too much of that. No,
Okay.
I don't even use. I'm not even on Facebook. So.
I got you. Well, that was my follow-up question, whether you've
Okay.
done any internet searching on this case. You don't even partake in Facebook or any of that stuff?
No, sir. I'm a West Virginia boy. I
Okay.
don't need that.
You got the summons to come here. Did you in any way suspect that you might be involved, and when I say involved, in terms of a juror in this case?
Only that I read in the paper that they were going to start picking jurors on the 10th. And I
Okay.
said, well, that possibility.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and so you thought that maybe potentially you might be a juror, a potential juror in the George Zimmerman case?
There was a possibility, yeah.
Okay. As a result of that, did you then pay closer attention to the case, thinking, God, I might be on that jury, I need to pay attention in terms of
No.
what's happened in the media at all? You
No.
didn't? So you have not watched any of the proceedings in terms of the court's rulings or arguments or that kind of stuff?
No, sir. It's boring.
It's boring?
It's
Okay.
boring.
Okay. Now, if you are a juror, you're not saying you're going to be bored when you're on the jury?
No.
Okay.
No, but to watch some of the other stuff.
Okay, I got you.
There's enough crime out there to watch.
Gotcha. So you don't adhere to the belief of like these news conferences that people had about the case. You didn't pay any attention to any of that stuff, if there were any.
That's just an opinion.
Okay. And would you agree that the media sometimes, TV and newspaper, might sometimes not just give the news, but also interject their opinion when they're telling you what the news is?
About like they do with the weather, yeah.
Okay. Let's assume you're a juror. You picked as a jury, you sit in that box behind you. You're listening to the evidence, and you hear a witness say, something. And then you remember something a little different from just, memory from the media. Do you understand in the law you've got to rely on which one do you think? What happens in the courtroom or what you heard on the media?
What happens in the courtroom?
Do you have any doubt in your mind that you can do that? If something were to come up and you would say, oh, hold on, I remember seeing something on TV about that, you understand you cannot factor that in making your decision at all?
Understand?
Okay, is there any dispute about that? Okay. And the limited contact you had with the case by media, did you have any first impressions about the case, you know, one way or the other, like anything related to what the charge is, or anything about that at all, or what?
Nah, nothing much. I just, me and my family talked. We were just very sorry for both families.
Okay. When you say you talked, and that's the other area I want to cover, let's right now remove the media out of the equation. Did you talk to your family about the case? Did you talk to your family briefly about the case, or extensively?
Months ago when it first happened.
Okay.
But not
And-
saying it's no.
Sure. And was that just like your wife or other family members, or?
I think we had some people over and they talked about it and we listened or something.
Were they out of towners, or were they here locally? The people you had over?
They were local.
Okay. And did they express their opinions about the case to you?
No, they said the same thing we did. It was just a shame it
Okay.
happened.
When you say it's a shame, you meant a shame for both families?
Both families.
The George Zimmerman family and Trayvon Martin's family?
Yes.
Okay. Do you recall observing in the media any of the family members of either George Zimmerman or Trayvon Martin?
Way back, I can remember Trayvon Martin's family was in.
Did you form any opinions or come to any first impressions as a result, other than you felt sorry for him?
No.
Okay. In other words, did you feel that that was a wrong thing that they got up and talked to the media? Did you think that?
Being a person who also has lost a child,
I'm sorry about that.
My son also, I can see why they would do that. It helps to get it off your chest, yes.
Brings a little, maybe not complete closure, but it brings a little bit of closure.
Well, it never brings closure,
I agree.
but it gets somewhat off your chest,
Yes, sir. Okay.
I'm sure.
And while you've mentioned that, and I'm sorry to dwell in it, but since you mentioned it this time, that this might be an opportune time to ask you, I'm sorry about the loss of your child.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, this case involved a young man, a child,
Mm-hmm.
teenager being shot and dying. Can you not factor in the death of your child in relation to this case? Can you keep that out of the equation?
Of course, yeah.
Okay, you understand the law requires you to
Yes.
do that. Thank you. Any other conversations that you may have had with friends about the case? Or, I know you're retired, I was going to ask you at work, but just your golfing buddies about the case?
Oh, we don't talk about anything but golf when we play golf.
Okay. So you have not, you don't recall any major discussion or discussion at all about the case with any friends at all, other than the friends you mentioned you had over?
Yeah.
And I guess what I'm asking is, this is,
I don't recall any.
okay, all right, because this has happened, happened back in February, it happened in this community, and so the question is whether you just, by chance, talk to people about it, and just in passing, no conversations at all about.
And if they mentioned it, I was probably disinterested, so.
Okay.
It's to overhear people sometimes.
Pardon me?
If you know, sometimes if you might have overheard somebody or something, but
Okay.
I never was involved in any
Sure.
discussion.
Do you recall anything you may have overheard in terms of people's opinions, or, because usually when people talk about something, they give an opinion as part of it, don't they?
No, I haven't heard anything like that. I just saw it in the paper where a lot of people were doing racial slurs and stuff like that.
Okay.
And,
What did you think about people doing racial slurs?
well, like I said, I'm a West Virginia boy, so I grew up with a lot of friends who were racial, and I never look at people of color.
You never people what?
I never look with people of what color they are. Or
You
what,
never- okay.
I don't care if they're green or purple.
Right.
Those are people.
So when you mentioned people were making racial slurs, I'm assuming you did not approve of that?
I don't know if I didn't approve of it, but I didn't think it was necessary.
Okay. And I'm assuming when you're saying racial slurs, it was derogatory in nature about what had happened?
Maybe overreaction.
I'm sorry.
Maybe an overreaction.
Okay. And how did that factor at all in terms of, in your thought process when you heard that kind of stuff, other than you approve of it?
I didn't veer on it. I didn't meditate on it any. I just
Okay.
shook my head, and sometimes when you see ignorance, you shake your head and go on. That's what I did.
So you just stayed quiet and just kind of
Oh, yes.
went on your way?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, you're picked as a juror and you start hearing some evidence, and then some things that maybe you read in the paper or saw on TV or your friends told you about doesn't happen. You know, that was all either speculation or it just wasn't relevant.
Mm-hmm.
Can you agree not to, to disregard whatever you heard from your friends too?
Yes.
Okay. As you sit here today, I know you filled out this questionnaire, I believe you did on Monday.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're on Thursday, so
Here's
we've got a few
Thursday.
days to think about it. I know you followed the judge's admonitions about not talking to anybody. Did you internally, just from Monday, since you've had a lot of time to sit downstairs on that first floor, did you think any more about the case? Did you say, God, I wish there was some stuff that I should have written down that I probably didn't? Is there anything else that you think would be important to tell myself, obviously the judge, and I think the defense will have I know the defense will have an opportunity to ask you questions, but is there anything you would want us to know now that you think is important for us to know about the case?
Not pertaining to the case, but I have a daughter that lives with me. She went through a divorce, and her and a 4.5-year-old lives with me. She just graduated, and she was offered a job, or she's about to second interview and offered a job.
Let me interrupt you a second. Don't obviously identify who your daughter is or all that. We're trying to remain anonymous. Thank you. I'm sorry.
But she's a surgical tech, and
Okay.
if she goes to work next week, it could be a problem with me because there's no one to take care of the child. She's a surgical tech, goes in 5 o'clock in the morning, and my wife works at the Sam's, and she's an auditor, so she goes in before the stores open at 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock in the morning. So the child would have to be taken care of.
So your grandkid is your basically the primary care.
Yes. I have a son in Florida, but he's in Apopka, so it's about 45 minutes away, so I would be the only one.
So do you believe at this time that may cause a hardship? And you know, we realize in their lives,
Yes.
jobs, etc. And we realize we're all trying to do our civic duty, but now is the time to express that if there is a potential.
Right. If she gets the job and accepts the job next week, then it would be a hardship.
Okay. When would she find out about getting the job? Is she interviewing like today? or
She did her second interview yesterday, and she was very positive about it. So she thinks she'll know something on Friday or Monday.
Okay. And I guess they're going to call her, and then if you found out, you'd be able to tell us that. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
That's the only
All right. Is
thing
there
would
anything?
hold me up.
Yes, sir. Is there? I apologize. I interrupted you. Were you finished with your answer?
I said that's the only thing we would code into the thing on hardship if I had to. Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else that you think is important that you want to now tell us at this time? Anything else? Okay.
As I know.
Okay. But I may have a moment.
Yes, you may.
I don't have any further questions. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Romero.
Thank you. Good morning, sir.
Morning.
You have the enviable position of helping us set our pace today, so I'm going to try and move through this sort of quickly. The whole purpose of this inquiry is to make sure that if you have heard other things about the case, knowing that they came from sources outside the courtroom, that we know what they are, and that you tell us that you can ignore them. So that's really the purpose of all this. So I'm going to inquire into that. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. You said that you got most of your information from some local news and also from the Sentinel?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. One other thing, I can understand when you say yes or no by the nod of the head, but the woman just right in front of you has to take down what you say. She's court reported. So I may remind you to answer out loud as we go through this. It just needs to be a verbal answer, all right?
Yes.
Then you also, when you mentioned that you read the Orlando Sentinel and maybe get it from TV, but I thought I also heard you said you realize that media sometimes will have a certain perspective or slant on things.
I think the media probably is like human beings. They say one thing and sometimes they end up meaning another thing. I don't know.
And I think you compared it to the weathermen, sort
Yes,
of giving
yes.
their opinions on it.
Yeah, their opinion on it. As a golfer, you know, we don't put too much in the opinion of the weatherman, so there you are.
Okay. You think then you look at what you hear in the papers with a certain amount of skepticism
Yes,
or on TV?
I think it's a broad view.
Okay. Does that sort of define, is that the way you are generally as a person when you look at things, both from the weather, from the media, and other sources, that you have that sort of level of skepticism?
Yes, I like to leave an open mind.
Okay. In response to Mr. DeLeon's question about whether or not you followed it, I thought your answer was that not particularly, or you didn't follow too much
The media on
this case.
No, I didn't follow it. I wasn't very interested in it.
If I asked you for the three things that, in your memory about this case, that stick out the most, just three snippets or facts or opinions, tell me what they would be.
The only thing that would stick out mainly would be that one was a white man and one was a black young man, and that the incident happened in a neighborhood watch or something like that.
Okay. So that the people involved were of different races?
Yes.
Did that in and of itself cause any significance to you, concern or interest?
No, and it didn't surprise me in either way.
Okay. And you mentioned also neighborhood watch. Tell me what you remember about that.
I just remember that they said he was a part of a neighborhood watch, and I happen to be a vice president of a homeowners association, so I can understand what a neighborhood watch is.
What do you understand it to be?
It is a volunteer that works in the neighborhood and helps out and watches for maybe problems or criminal activity or anything else like that. Anything that it's just a.
Have you ever done anything like that for your homeless association?
No, I have not.
Okay. Another thing that Mr. DeLeon asked, I want to mention for a moment is, well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to wait a second because that was 2 and I asked you for 3. So tell me the third thing, if I ask you the most significant or just things that come to mind when I ask you about the George Zimmerman Trayvon Martin matter, what comes to mind?
The other thing would be I would have to say the crowd racial reaction to the whatever happened.
To the event, to the shooting?
Yeah.
Okay. And what was your opinion of that reaction?
My first impression was that I thought it was an overreaction.
Okay. And the reaction you're talking about is some of the, I don't want to put words in your mouth that cause you to have memories you don't have, but tell me what reaction it is that you're talking about. When you say the reaction to it may have been a bit of an overreaction, tell me what it is you're talking about.
I just felt it was blown out of proportion. I mean, if it had been a white person and a white person, it may not have been, or if it had been a black person and a black person, it may not have been quite as blown out of proportion.
Okay.
That's just, I don't know that. That's the thought I had.
Okay. Do you carry any racial concerns with you that might affect your ability to address this matter, be it 2 whites, 2 blacks, white or black, or anything?
No, sir.
When you say it may have been an overreaction, in one sense, I'm interested because you had lost a child yourself?
Yes, I lost a child through paranoid schizophrenia.
Okay, I'm sorry to hear that. Would you mind telling me how long ago that was?
About 5 years ago.
Okay. As we all go through life's experiences, such as the most significant trauma of losing a child, I'm just wondering, you mentioned that this event was sad, the loss of a life. Do you think that that life experience of having lost a son would impact your ability to address this matter, realizing that the Martins have lost a son?
No,
Okay.
we're not.
The judge will tell you that you're not supposed to decide your verdict because of sympathy. And actually, there's a lot that the judge is going to instruct you. We call them jury instructions.
Mhm.
It's how, once you listen to the facts, you apply the law. Would you be able to listen to a judge's instruction that you decide the case only on the facts and the law and not on sympathies, and even not an over-focus on your life experiences? Would you be
Yes.
able to do that? Any concern as you sit here today that were you to hear from the mother, from the father, explaining that they lost their son, you think that that would have an impact on you, that you could not set aside the emotions of it and deal with the facts of it?
No, not in any way.
You had mentioned also that you've seen some photos of both George Zimmerman and Trayvon Martin. Can you describe for me the photos of George Zimmerman that you remember seeing?
He was a little less in weight. He was a little smaller man at the time.
Okay. All right.
And they were back when it first.
Okay.
You said it was February?
February of 2012.
Yeah.
Not going to test your memory too much, but did you remember if he had hair or not? He has hair now. Remember if he had hair back then in that picture?
No, I sure don't.
Okay. But you do remember him to be less
Smaller
weight,
proportion, yeah.
Smaller proportions. Nicely said. Anything else you remember about that picture?
No, the only picture I can remember in my mind is that when they were was in the newspaper was when they were putting him in the police car and they handcuffed him to the police car. That's the only one I remember.
Okay. Was that an actual photograph or a video?
It was a photograph.
Okay.
I
Did
think it was
that
on the night.
photograph depict anything particular about George Zimmerman?
No.
Okay. Any other photographs of George Zimmerman?
Mm.
Okay. This has to be a
No, ma'am.
Thank you. And now let's talk about pictures that you've seen of Trayvon Martin. What do you remember?
All I remember is that they showed a picture with he had a sweatshirt on, a sweatshirt and a hooded sweatshirt on.
Okay.
And it seemed like the picture was younger than he actually was at the time, or something like that. That's all I remember.
Okay. That's one photograph. Any others you remember of Trayvon Martin?
No, not that I noticed.
Okay. Again, the main focus for right now is to make sure that should memories come back up, that you not rely on those as being fact unless you also see them here in the courtroom. Do we have agreement with that?
Yes.
And that you would defer to only that which you see in the courtroom to rely on?
Yes.
To come up with your verdict? What about if some other juror, once your case is over, you've seen all the facts, go back in the deliberation room to do what jurors do, which is to decide a verdict, and some other juror says to you, I didn't see this picture of George in the courtroom, but I definitely remember seeing a picture of him and he looked this way. How would you react to that juror?
If I had any reaction, I would probably say I just didn't see it.
Sorry?
If I had any reaction at all, I would just probably say that I didn't see it.
Okay. And the judge will instruct you that, again, you rely only on what you see here, and you'd be able to do that?
Yes, sir.
Do you spend any time at all on the internet?
No. My wife and daughter tear me up all the time because I don't do it.
Because you don't? I guess you said a couple of times you remember when the days when Western Union was fast?
Yes.
Okay. The judge will also instruct you that you are not to do any research on your own about this case. I think she's already told you that, right?
Yes.
Seems that's going to be pretty easy for you to comply with.
Since I can't get online, yeah.
Okay, good enough. In the past few days, since you first came here, was it Monday morning? that you
Yes.
got here? And have you talked to any of the other jurors sitting down with virtually nothing to do for the last 3 days about what's going on with this case?
Not about the case. We've talked about 1,000 things, but not about the case.
In effect, then, you comply with the judge's instructions that you not discuss the procedure or the process of this matter with any other jurors?
No, sir.
You had mentioned just a comment that I was curious about when you said that there's enough crime out there to watch. Tell me what you mean.
Well, as an older person, most of us grew up where we could leave our windows open and our doors open, and our neighbors were our friends, and you could send your kids out into the neighborhood, and the neighbors were watching. Well, it's not possible now, so because of the crime.
It's also a concern over the way the media
Yes.
brings that stuff to the forefront.
We hear about everything now instead of, we hear about a child in a toilet in India, so we hear everything. It's almost too much TMI.
Mhm. That's an internet term, so you're picking up some of it.
That's my daughter gives it
Or
to me.
maybe it's just a teenage term. Tell me some of the people who did come over and talk about it, at least in your presence, about this case. Tell me what you remember about those conversations.
Oh, it was so long ago. It was, I don't know, it must have been a year ago or so. But it was just, did you see in the paper? Or did you see in the paper this? That's all it was.
Okay.
It wasn't a long drawn out, it was just a 30-second remarks or something.
All right. Then you also noticed something about the case where there was an issue regarding racial slurs.
Slurs?
I thought you said that you remember something about this case having an event within it of some type of a racial slur. Did I hear you right? Or
I don't know if, but the Mr. Jackson that came to town, and I think there was a pastor that came to town and so forth, and
Reverend Jackson and Reverend Sharpton?
yeah,
Okay.
I remember that, and I thought, why, that's what I thought was blown out of proportion a little bit.
Okay. To the extent that you did not agree with their involvement, would that affect how you would handle the case here today?
No.
Any bias or anything against Reverend Sharpton, Reverend Jackson?
No.
Let's talk about your daughter and then is it grandson?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You tell us about 4.5 years old, because you said 4.5, right? I think it's.
Well, he's
tell
going
you
on
4.5.
5. He'll be 5 in August.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if she, I guess the question right now is you're not certain if she's going to get a job, but hopefully she will.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Knock on wood, yeah.
And then if she does, then you are going to at least have to help out with caregiving for
Yes,
your grandson?
which I do already.
Okay.
But because of the early hours, I'll have to, feed him, get him up in the morning, feed him, take him to school, and then pick him up at 3:30.
Let's just say that the court decided, we decided that you're going to be on our jury. Tell me how you would handle dealing with, or having your daughter deal with your grandson, and how would you deal with the fact that you're now sitting on the jury for maybe 4 to 6 weeks?
You'd mess up my golf game, I'll tell you that.
Well, okay. Sometimes they say taking a few weeks off can help a golf game. So
Yeah.
there may be some benefit there.
I'm sure it would be nervous and pressure on people, on myself and my family, but I would have to find an alternative to the baby,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know where I would find it.
Okay.
We have no more family in town except my son.
Well, with a week or two's notice, you think you'd be able to accomplish that?
I don't know, sir.
Okay?
If you don't have family to help you, usually you don't have anybody to help you. Understand?
Anything about this case in particular that would make you either want to serve on the jury or not want to serve on it?
Nothing I can think of except for the endurance of the 4 or 6 weeks. I think they said maybe that they said downstairs that it could last.
Okay. Anything about what you know, the facts of the case, that would make you want to serve or not want to serve?
No.
I might just have a moment, Your Honor. I asked you about conversations downstairs. Have you heard any other jurors or potential jurors talking about the case or talking about Mr. Zimmerman or Trayvon Martin or George Zimmerman?
No.
As to the issue of your scheduling, does your grandson go to daycare now, did you say, or school?
Summer camp?
Summer camp.
Yeah.
And just, is that most of the day?
From 9 to 3:30, I think it is.
Okay. And what time does your wife get off work?
Well, she goes in at 4, so she doesn't get off till about 2.
4 a.m.
Uh-huh.
to 2 p.m.
2 p.m. My daughter's not working now.
Let's presume, yeah, but she might be.
But if she is, she goes in at 5 usually.
5 a.m.
Most
So-
surgeries are done in the morning, so they go in for prep on 5 o'clock.
So the concern would be making sure you get your grandson to daycare or summer camp, because then your wife can pick him up?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. I don't have any questions. I appreciate your time. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. If you'll still remain seated, sir, and when counsel is ready, please approach. Sir, if you'll follow Deputy Jarvis, and Deputy Jarvis, we can have the next.
Your Honor, E75.
Please be seated and if you will understand that you are going to be referred to as Juror E75, and the purpose for the questioning this morning is the juror questionnaire that you filled out on Monday morning. And we're going to begin with Mr. De La Ronda.
Mr. Court. Good morning, sir.
Morning.
As Judge Nelson indicated, we're limited in terms of what we're asking you at this time, but I did have an opportunity to read your questionnaire from Monday. Let me make sure I'm reading your handwriting correctly. You stated that what you had heard, not very much about either. I just heard what the news had to say about, and you never paid much attention to the gossip. I tend to think for myself. Did I get that right?
Yes.
I apologize. My writing is terrible too. So let me talk about exposure to the news. Was it local news? Was it in terms of TV, or was it national news, or was it newspaper, internet?
Local.
All of that?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about the local news. Do you recall what stations you would have been listening to or watching when you?
Just whenever I turned on the TV, Bright
Okay.
House had on.
How about national news? Do you favor one station versus another in terms of for your news?
I personally don't watch a lot of TV, so.
Okay. How about the newspaper?
No.
Okay. So we're limited then, or we're left with the internet. Did you do some, what, Facebook or that kind of stuff?
Yeah, you'd see it all over Facebook, that
Okay.
type of thing.
All right. And when you saw the case or stories about the case on Facebook, was it limited to Facebook, or did you do any Twitter or that kind of stuff?
Yeah, it was on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff.
Okay. Well, let me talk for a few moments about that area. Did you form impressions when you first observed stories about that, or when you saw that on the internet?
I mean, everybody has their own opinion.
Sure.
I didn't generally develop one.
Okay. All right. Was your first contact with this case over the internet or on TV at the time it happened, back in February, or was it more recent?
It was back in February when kids at school would just talk about it all day.
All right. So you see it on the internet. Did you do any research on your own about it?
No.
Okay. In other words, if you Googled Trayvon Martin or George Zimmerman and just see if you could find out more stuff about the case?
No.
Okay. All right. So your knowledge of the case was just based on what you saw when you were doing Facebook and that
Yes,
kind of
sir.
stuff?
Yeah.
Okay. I gather there's also commentary too. I don't do Facebook,
Yeah.
my wife and kids do, but
Yeah.
so did you read any of the commentary from different people?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Was the commentary just one-sided in favor of Trayvon Martin or in favor of George Zimmerman, or a combination of them?
It was a combination for sure.
Okay. Did you read all those commentaries or just some of them?
Just some of them.
Okay. I guess what I'm trying to gather from you is, and I know your knowledge is limited, and you, as you mentioned, you don't like to get into gossip.
Right.
Did you feel that commentary was more people's opinions or gossip, or did you think they had some insight in terms of what they were talking
I feel it was
about?
more just opinion based, not really, people didn't really have an idea of what they were talking about. They were just going with what their heart felt.
Okay, okay. Did that, and I know you stated you don't have an opinion in terms of
Right.
being able to keep an open mind as to whether this defendant is innocent or guilty, whether
Right.
George Zimmerman is innocent or guilty. My question is, in terms of while you were reading that commentary, did you kind of just start forming impressions at that time? Not that you formed an ultimate opinion, but did you, feel sorry for what had happened, or did you come to some first impressions about the case?
Well, you always feel sorry when there's
Okay.
something like that
Sure.
that happens.
Okay. Did you have any other first impressions about the case? And as best you can, tell me what you remember in terms of facts about the case. Do you remember any specifics about what actually happened?
Not, to be honest, not one.
You know an individual is dead.
Yeah,
I'm
that-
assuming.
that's
You know
about it.
somebody's been charged. Do you know
Right.
anything other than that?
I know the two people involved, and that's it.
Okay. How about anything else that may have been related to the case that wasn't, in terms of the crime itself, but other stuff related to the case? You remember anything about that?
Just what people would say at school, but it was like people just talking.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about what the people at school were talking about.
They just talk about like who did what, and everybody pretty much mix match stories and like put together one big basket.
Okay. And so the commentary from people were that when you say who did what, you're talking about whether it was Trayvon Martin or whether it
Yeah.
was George Zimmerman. What was some of the discussions at school about that?
It was just like little things like Trayvon started it, or George Zimmerman did it, and
Okay. Anything else you can remember about what happened in terms of what people said happened? 'Cause I know you weren't there, but I'm just telling you what
right.
people said.
Just people would just talk about how George shot him for no reason, and other people would say the complete opposite,
Okay.
that it was totally Trayvon's fault. And
And would you weigh in on that at all? In other words, when people were talking about it just among friends or people, and you would say, hold on, let's listen to this side. In other words, did you take one position or another?
I tend to sit back and listen.
Okay. So you didn't vocalize yourself at all? You didn't?
No, if I don't know enough about an issue, I won't generally get involved on it.
Is that you just generally by nature, just this, anything, not just this case?
Yeah, right.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. You mentioned Twitter. I gather there was some commentary in Twitter about it too, or was there? Do you remember reading anything about the case?
Back
on
in
Twitter?
February, but I haven't seen anything recently.
Okay, all right. Now, did you continue to, whenever you did Facebook, or what I'm assuming, you do it most, I'm a lot older than you, but your
Right.
generation does it a lot. I know my daughters do.
Right.
But what I'm saying is, when you would open it up every time, would you read a story about it every time, or would you just kind of glance at it?
No, it was definitely like the first couple days when it happened and everybody was talking about it. It was like a huge like buzz on Facebook, and you would read like a few things here and there. But after that, it was just like, all right, just
You just
blow
kind
it
of
by.
tuned it out, you just kind of went
Right,
by it?
yeah.
Okay. Now, how about like YouTube or any of those other places? You see any stories about this or comments?
I mean, you'd see the video actually be there, but I never clicked on any videos to really get into it.
Now, would you agree with me that sometimes there's news, and then there's sometimes news, but opinion's kind of thrown in? Do you
Yeah,
think, I guess
yeah,
my question
yeah.
is, do you think the news, there's a lot of opinion kind of
Yeah.
interjected in there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. In terms of when you were looking at Facebook or other media sources, do you recall now any news conferences being had by anybody in the case, or commentary by lawyers or other people about the case?
No,
Anything
sir.
come to mind?
No, sir.
Okay. What comes to mind when if I asked you in terms of, tell me something about the George Zimmerman case, based on what you remember reading about on the internet, what comes to mind?
African American shot dead.
Okay,
George Zimmerman's at fault type of thing.
okay. In terms of what you remember reading?
Yeah.
Okay, okay. And I gather you were able to filter through that and still come to the conclusion that you could keep an open mind in this case, is that correct?
Yes, for sure.
Okay, is there any doubt about that at all?
No, sir.
Okay. You know, the law requires that if you're picked as a juror, that anything you would have read about in the paper or on internet, or, I'm sorry, you don't read the paper,
Right.
the internet, or watched on TV, that cannot factor into your decision. Do you understand that?
Yeah.
You gotta leave that outside these doors. Can
Yes,
you do
sir.
that?
Yeah.
Is there any doubt in your mind that you can do that?
Nah.
Okay. Now, you're picked as a juror, you're listening to the evidence, and then all of a sudden you realize, God, I saw something on Facebook about that, and it's different than what the witness is saying. Which would you rely on?
Obviously, what the witnesses say.
Okay, so you understand that what was
Yeah,
on Facebook
yeah.
is not evidence?
Yeah.
Okay. We've got here where you work, and we're gonna ask potentially at another time in terms of your work, but you mentioned in terms of whether there was, this case may last a certain number of weeks. We don't know yet exactly, but I want to ask you about, you answered that, you said you had no conflict, is that correct, in terms of this would not, everybody, let me restate that, everybody has a conflict, because if we are all living in this world, we either got family, friends,
Right.
we got to do our work. And we realize we ask people to take time from their everyday jobs. The
Right.
question is, would it be an insurmountable hardship? And you stated it would not, is that correct?
I've already worked it out.
You've worked it out?
Yeah.
So you've thought it through, and potentially
Yeah.
you're a juror, you know that you will have to do something.
Yeah, I've already talked to my manager.
Okay, and I'm assuming, and don't tell us where you work right now, but
Right.
that would not present a problem, I'm
No.
assuming? Okay. And as the judge, in terms of the questionnaire, the judge is considering people may be sequestered, that would not be a problem either?
No,
Is that
sir.
correct? Okay. If I may have a moment, Your Honor. I don't have any further questions, thank you, sir.
Mr. West?
Thank you. Hi, good morning.
Morning.
My name is Don West. I'm one of the attorneys for Mr. Zimmerman, along with Mark O'Mara. Aren't you cold?
A little bit.
Is it hot in the jury room?
A little bit.
So you're kind of,
Yeah.
gotcha, okay. Let's start with the last thing first that we were talking about with Mr. Del Rionda. You work out things at work
Yeah.
if you are on the jury and are unavailable for the next month or so.
Yeah.
What did you work out, and are they still going to pay you?
I don't necessarily know that. I just know that he told me I could be taken off the schedule as long as I needed.
Okay, so in other words, you would still have your job?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
So you still got your job, but you don't know whether or not you would be paid?
No, sir.
Is that important? Do you, in terms of whether it would be a hardship for you?
A little bit, but I mean, stuff you gotta do.
Well, that's what I'm wondering is we want everyone to, of course, fulfill their civic duty.
Right.
And obviously this is a case that's gotten a lot of attention, but from a hardship standpoint, when you said you worked it out, that's what I'm wondering. Are you going to worry about paying rent or car payments or things like that if you don't know whether or not you'll be paid?
No, sir.
Why not?
I've got mine.
Okay, you have sufficient
Yeah.
resources
Yes, sir.
financially?
Yeah.
So that the financial loss from not working for a month or 6 weeks would not result in a hardship for you?
No, sir.
Have you talked to family or friends about helping you out financially if you're on the jury?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell me just a little about that?
I mean, it's just parents are gonna help.
Parents, explain to me a little bit, if you would, what that arrangement
Like
is.
I have car and insurance payments, but my parents will help me with it.
So they've agreed to take over any payments you have if you're on the jury?
I haven't talked to them yet.
How about housing? Do you live at home?
Yes, sir.
So that's, you're not paying rent, so
No,
that's
sir.
not a problem? So you're all set in that regard?
Yes, sir.
Good, okay. I'm not nearly as knowledgeable as you are on social media, so pardon my ignorance if I ask you some questions that
Yeah.
seem that I should know more than I do. When you talk about Facebook, for example,
Yeah.
and the case was discussed on Facebook, what do you mean by that?
People would just voice their opinions on the case and whatnot.
And are those people that you are friends with?
I mean, define friends. On Facebook, yes, but in real life, I don't have any contact with them whatsoever.
So would the exchange of information or opinions and that sort of thing be posted through a Facebook friend that you have?
Yes, sir.
Have you ever been involved in that dialogue where you've responded to something someone said,
Not once.
never posted a comment about anything connected with the case?
Not that I can remember.
This is where I'm really falling short. Would comments be posted on your Facebook? Or
No,
would
sir.
you- Okay. You would be looking at comments posted on someone else's Facebook?
Yes, sir.
So you would have access to it?
Right, it all comes up in a social news feed, so you just scroll down this news feed.
Tell me how that works.
Right, it's individual people down the news feed, and whenever somebody posts something on their Facebook, it shows up in the news feed, and it's a collective news feed of everybody.
Is the news feed sort of defined by the news story?
No, it's just defined by whatever people post on their Facebook. It could be whatever.
Not in any way?
No, not any way
This
related to
case.
just one subject, no.
So anybody that's active on Facebook that
Yeah.
posts something, you would get a notice?
If they're your friend, yes.
Can you estimate for me how many of those friends that you would have access to their comments and them have access to yours?
I really can't. I don't even use Facebook anymore.
Well, back then, when you were engaged regularly in seeing
Could be
these,
a few thousand.
you had, are you saying, again, I pardon my ignorance, but you had access to the comments regarding this case of several thousand people?
Oh, well, I mean, comments about the case could be like a couple hundred. But as far as like access to people's Facebooks and the whole newsfeed, a couple thousand.
Do you think there was about a couple of hundred people within your Facebook network that were regularly commenting on the case?
I don't know about regularly, but there was definitely things about the case on Facebook for a little bit.
What time frame?
Just in February when everything really came out.
And what was the general discussion about that?
Just who to point the finger at, pretty much.
Were you aware around that time of any community reaction?
Yeah.
What did you hear about that?
People talking about starting riots at school and stuff like that, just talking.
Riots, why?
Because they're mad.
And what was it that was the reason they were angry?
Because Trayvon was their friend, or Trayvon was somebody they knew.
So,
They felt as though no action was being taken and whatnot. A lot of us brushed it off, but a lot of other people went along with it.
So are you saying that you had access to Facebook posts about this case from people who claimed they were Trayvon Martin's friend?
Yes, sir.
And can you tell me about any of those?
I mean, they were just mad at Zimmerman, and I generally didn't get into it. I looked at people fight all the time on Facebook over it and just stayed away.
Well, how did you feel about that when you heard someone who claims to have known Trayvon Martin, that they were angry about what had happened?
Just felt bad for him. It's like, you lost a friend, I understand, but
Did you look at the case, what was in the media on Facebook, to form your own impression about what happened or what may have happened?
no, sir.
You saying you didn't have any opinion or any impression of the case?
No, sir.
Outside the group of people that had, that claimed anyway to know Trayvon Martin personally, were there other people more generally that were talking about the case back around the time it happened?
Yes, sir.
And what was the subject of that? What was it specifically people were talking about?
Who's guilty? Who's the one that did it? Who's the one that started it? Who's at fault?
And what were you hearing about that?
Everybody just voiced their opinion on it.
Okay, well, those that were saying that George Zimmerman is guilty, what were they saying that you saw or heard about?
Or they were just saying that he wrongfully gunned him down, and other people were saying that Trayvon attacked him, and other people were saying that like there was like yelling involved and neighbors witnessed and all sorts of stuff, and I just generally didn't get involved in it.
What were the people saying that were posting? Is that the right term?
That were
Posting. I don't want to just
posting on Facebook.
Right. Is that what you're talking about? What were the people saying that were posting comments that said it was George Zimmerman's fault?
Same thing. They were just talking. It's really hard to remember, to be honest. It's been a little bit.
Of course, I know it's been more than a year now, but I'm still looking at that particular time frame. It sounds like, that was the time that you were really paying attention to it, and that you've lost interest over time. So let's focus on the time that it was really important that you follow what was going on. So, at that point, I'm trying to get some details. Let me sort of outline it this way. there aren't any right answers, there aren't any wrong answers. We're not expecting you to make a decision based upon that. But our goal is to find out what you know about the case, and then we can talk about whether or not that had any effect on you.
Okay.
So let's talk first of all about what were people saying that you read about on Facebook or heard about from any source that it was George Zimmerman's fault.
They were just saying that he hunted him down in his car and that he got out and like tackled him to the ground and shot him, and that neighbors witnessed and all sorts of stuff, and they would each get into their own little spats with each other.
Well, tell me about that. Are you saying that someone expressed an opinion or stated what they thought was a fact?
Yeah.
That George Zimmerman chased Trayvon Martin and tackled him to the ground?
Yes, sir.
And then what happened?
And other people would combat that and say that no, it was Trayvon that actually went up to George Zimmerman and started hitting him, and George Zimmerman was just defending himself, and it would just go back and forth. Both sides stated things that weren't true, or what the news said wasn't true, and all that.
So you were hearing this back and forth,
Yeah.
or watching it or seeing the post.
Yeah.
Did you ever weigh in at all?
No.
Did you ever think, this sounds more likely than that?
No, because I generally didn't pay attention to really either side. I know I'm kind of leaving you blank on that one, but
Yeah. Is there anything else someone said through Facebook that you became aware of, or from any other source, about George Zimmerman? Anything about what he was doing that night, or
that he was. I heard neighborhood watch and all sorts of stuff like that, and that he was allowed to be patrolling, and other people said he wasn't allowed to be patrolling, and other people said he wasn't patrolling, and it was just like.
Was there any discussion about the gun?
Not really. Not that I remember.
Was there any discussion about any recordings?
Definitely not.
Any discussions at any point about, I think you said a resident had heard something. You mentioned something about
that people were saying that neighbors had witnessed it happen. Other people were saying that no, they just heard noises and stuff like that.
What do you know about the people that saw something?
I don't know anything.
What were people saying online about the witnesses?
That people saw the whole thing, and like that George Zimmerman's going to jail and all this other stuff, and I was just like,
what?
It's like, what do you say to it? It's just kind of like, it doesn't involve me.
Were you able to completely detach yourself from the discussion?
Yeah, for sure.
So you never considered whether or not there might be any truth to what one side or the other was saying?
Right, because like normally the discussion would come up in school and teachers would immediately shut that down. They were like, you're not supposed to be talking about that.
Tell me a little more about that part of it, and we'll get back to the Facebook in a second.
It's like people would bring it up in school all the time, and it's a controversial subject, so the teachers shut it down.
How would that happen? Well, let me back up. Was this, you don't have to name the school, but was it college, high school?
High school.
High school. And what year were you in at the time?
2012, 2013.
And what grade?
Senior. Oh, no, when this was all happening, junior. Probably 2011, 2012.
As a frame of reference, just not anybody disputing that the incident took place on February 26, 2012, as a frame of reference. When did you graduate?
A couple weeks ago.
Of 2013?
Yeah.
Right, so in February of 2012, were you a junior in high school?
Yes, sir.
All right, now, how would this case come up at school, and how would the teachers become involved?
And Trayvon Martin's like friends and other people would bring it up just to like really have something to talk about because they had nothing to do.
All right,
And
tell me what you mean by Trayvon Martin's friends.
Everybody said they knew him. Most people didn't. Like everybody, after it happened, it's
Are you talking about people going to school with you
yeah,
that said they knew Trayvon Martin
Yes, sir.
personally?
yeah.
Do you
But
know,
nobody actually, like most of them didn't actually know him whatsoever.
Do you know where Trayvon Martin was from?
I don't.
Tell me about some of the people that told you they were friends, as in real life friends, as opposed to internet friends, with Trayvon Martin.
To be honest, it was mainly minority figures at school. Everybody just kind of voiced their opinion about it.
So when
And then
someone...
teachers just told them to cut it out. It's not a good subject to bring up in school.
The people that came up to you or that you heard speak that said they were personal friends with Trayvon Martin, did they express an opinion about the case?
Yes, sir.
And what was that opinion?
That George was guilty.
Across the board?
Yeah.
Did anyone who claimed to be a friend of Trayvon Martin think that George might be innocent?
No.
Did anyone think that Trayvon Martin might have started this?
No. They were all pretty firm in a collective opinion.
Okay, and what was the basis for that? Did they tell you what
Anger.
they thought had actually happened?
No, because I never got into the discussions with them. Nobody actually came to me with a discussion because I generally didn't get involved, so they would go back to back with each other. I would just be in the background, kind of watching over.
Was there another contingent, if you will, other students that would debate this issue in front of you?
Yes, sir.
All right, and who was the other contingent? Were these people that you knew?
Yeah, classmates.
And were these people that expressed an opinion about the case?
Yes.
Okay, and what was their opinion?
That he was completely innocent until proven guilty. They said there was people that said innocent until proven guilty. Other people said no, he's innocent. Like this is what happened.
Were these personal friends of yours?
Some of them were
Were any of the people that...
on both sides.
That's what I was going to ask
Yeah.
you. If you were personal friends with some of the people that had taken the position George was completely innocent,
Yeah.
were you also personal friends with some of the people that said George is completely guilty?
Yes.
And did any of the friends that thought George Zimmerman was innocent claim to know George Zimmerman?
No.
But some of the people that said that George is guilty did claim to know Trayvon Martin?
Yes, sir.
Personally? Did they tell you anything about Trayvon Martin's background?
No.
Did you know anything about Trayvon Martin's background?
Still don't.
You didn't know where he was from, I take it. Was there any, well, if somebody claims to be a friend and they advance an argument, did you ask them to tell you why? Why did they feel that way?
No, because I never got into the arguments with him.
So during this back and forth between the group that says George is innocent
Right.
and the other group that says George is guilty and Trayvon Martin was without fault, you never offered a comment, never offered an opinion.
Never voiced my opinion on it.
What was your opinion?
I didn't have one.
So during all of that, you never formed an opinion or never thought one side had a better argument than the other?
No, because, I mean, both sides were really just making stuff up. The kids get to a point where they run out of stuff to fire at each other with, so they just make something off the top of their head. And then
Give me
stories get mixed matched, and
Well,
that's the point where you just toss it aside and you're like, I'm done with it. I'm not gonna get involved in it whatsoever.
give me an example of what someone that you realized they had just plain made up.
Somebody said Trayvon was white, and that it wasn't a black kid. He was just wearing a ski mask and gloves, and got shot because he looked like he was robbing houses and stuff and cars in the neighborhood. And I was like, okay. And then that got shut down the next day.
So you knew that was false?
Bullshit, yeah.
You knew that what?
It was a lie.
What was a lie?
That he wasn't white.
Did you consider any of the other aspects of that comment?
Like the fact that he was robbing houses in the neighborhood or something?
Right.
No.
Did you weigh in on that in your own mind? Did you think that might be true or definitely was not true?
I mean, could be, could not be. I don't know. I wasn't there.
Anything else that you were told by your friends in these discussions that you know is just not true?
Not off the top of my head.
What percentage do you think of the people on this issue that you've talked with or heard them talking about this case with favored, let's say, the prosecution side, Trayvon Martin's side?
God, I'd have to say it's really, they were more leaning on Trayvon's side. It was probably like a 70-30 type of deal.
Are you saying?
And that was mainly because it was, I was going to school every day, and there was just kids that, more and more kids claimed to be friends with Trayvon Martin, and more people got influenced and got into it by the day and just started taking sides.
Tell me what was going on at some point when a teacher decided to, shut it down.
People were just getting a little too into it and starting to get more verbal about it, I guess you could say, a more colorful vocabulary with it. And so they were just finally like, all right, settle it down, don't need to be talking about it. It's starting to get a little out of hand.
And where would this take place within the school?
Just in the classroom. It would start out as just chit chat, and then it would progress to get more people involved and stuff like that.
This was a pretty emotionally charged discussion, typically?
Yeah. Typically, yeah.
Did you see it as an emotionally charged discussion?
Like, did I put any emotion towards it?
Did you think, hey, these people feel really strong?
Oh, yeah.
about this?
Yeah, for sure.
And you never did? You never had any strong feelings in this case on anything?
I don't know anybody in the case, so
Sure, okay.
can't really put any emotion towards it.
You mentioned, I think, that some of the people that claimed to know Trayvon Martin personally were minority.
Yes, sir.
What do you mean by that?
Spanish, black, Asian, I mean, also white as well. But just most of them that claimed to be friends with him were minorities.
The people that claimed to be personal friends with Trayvon Martin included African Americans?
Yes, sir.
Did it also include Hispanics
Yes, sir.
and Asians
Yes, sir.
and Caucasians or
Yes,
white?
sir.
Well, that wouldn't be a minority, I guess, in the sense that you're talking about it, or would it?
Right, yeah.
Did you, or have you ever had the sense that this case was racial in some way, that race may have entered into the...
There was a whole big discussion on that. Everybody tried to play the race issue with that one. Like, everyone was, at first everyone was saying that George Zimmerman was white and that shot a black guy, and so that nobody's gonna care, and people are just saying stuff like that, and then other people are saying, well, he's not white, he's actually Spanish, and that Trayvon shot him, and so he shot back, and stuff like that, and it would just get into mixed details, and people were just mixing up stories.
Well, based upon all of that stuff that you heard, and the comments on Facebook, and whatever other source of information you've had, what do you think? Do you think that race played any part in this?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Tell me how.
Just got people a little more riled up.
Can you expand on that at all?
Like, people generally, at school, everybody was saying that if it wasn't between two minorities, or a lot of people were saying racist stuff, like if it wasn't a white person that was shot, or if it was a white person that was shot, everybody would be on this case, and because it was a black kid that was shot, nobody cares. And
Who was saying that?
just people at school.
Any of your friends?
No.
Any of those that claim to be
Claim
friends
to
with
be
Trayvon?
friends with Trayvon, yes, sir.
So you said that you think this case has some race aspect about it?
A little bit.
Okay.
Not
Now I
in my
want-
personal opinion,
That's
but
what-
in other people's, yeah.
That's what I want to know about yours. When I say, do you think it has some
In my-
racial aspect, I want to know what you think.
It wouldn't matter to me if it was a white man, black man, Hispanic, it doesn't matter.
That's your bottom line opinion, right? But my question is, why do you think race, in your opinion, why do you think this case has a racial component to it?
Objection asked and answered.
Allow him to answer.
Your Honor, may I
said-
object
I said
to...
you're allowed to.
Yes, I would like to object to objections asked and answered. This isn't cross-examination, this is jury selection. I think...
I'm not going to start in this case telling people that they can't make any proper objection. I will rule on the objections that are made. You may answer the last question.
Sure, thank you.
One more time.
I think I may have lost my train of thought a
You want to
bit
go
too.
back?
I'll come up with one. We're talking about race,
Right.
and that you said, you think, from what other people have said, that this is, there's a racial component to the case.
Yes, sir.
And that's what I want to know from your perspective. Why do you think there's a racial component to the case?
I personally do not find that there's a racial component to the case. I feel as though other people do.
Are you saying then that you disagree with others that may feel that way?
Yes, sir.
And have you looked at the information that's been out there that you've been exposed to and feel that you're comfortable with that decision?
No, sir. I haven't looked at any information that's out there, really.
I know, and that's what's so hard about this.
Right.
Because based on all the information that you've been exposed to in the case,
Then no, I do not find that there's a
good, bad,
racial.
and different,
Right.
are you satisfied, so at this point, that this is not a racially based incident?
No, I don't think it's a racial incident.
Okay. Have you gone on any of the websites or Facebook pages that may connect up with this case in some way? That may be in support of one group or another?
Not other than Facebook, no.
You were saying that the Facebook discussion that you've had is been with other people that are in your circle of friends.
It's Just, yeah, it's people that are friends with each other that just comment on one another's posts.
Mhm.
Some people would post stuff about Trayvon, others about Zimmerman. And people would just comment on them.
Yeah, the question that I'm trying to get at now is, did you go on any web pages, Facebook sponsored or otherwise, that take a position in the case?
No, sir.
Are you aware of any websites
I am not.
that are dedicated to one side or the other, for lack of a better term?
I am not.
Anything else other than what you've told us that you've heard about the case or may in any way influence your view of the case at this point?
No, sir.
You mentioned that you at this point are still at home,
Yes, sir.
living with your parents. Your parents or other people that you would respect have. I know you saying basically the kids at school you don't pay that much attention
Right.
to because it's divisive and you don't
Right.
need that. How about people that you actually respect? Has anyone that you respect offered an opinion about this case?
Yes and no. I'm going to start on the yes point.
Sure.
People have tried to voice their opinion, and I told them simply I cannot have any contact with them about it. So they pretty much just stopped at that point. As far as the no point, my family is really neutral on the whole subject.
People that have tried to express an opinion that you respect, you didn't want to hear it?
Well, it's not that I didn't want to hear it, it's that I'm not allowed to hear it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was very unclear. Before you came here and were told you can't talk about the case with anybody.
Yeah, then, yeah, okay, that's different.
I'm sorry, that
Yeah,
was my fault.
yeah, just friends, parents, and stuff like that. As far as my family goes, neutral on the whole thing, but as far as friends, parents, they voice their opinion on Trayvon's side, and other friends' parents voice their opinion as far as Zimmerman. So it was like,
People that you respect,
it was just like school. It was like, it's school just with older people, I guess you could say. They're just chit-chatting away.
all right. I can't help but see that you have something written on your shirt. Did you choose the shirt because of any particular message it conveys?
No, sir.
But what does it say?
Obey.
Oh, and what context is that?
It's just a clothing company.
Oh, that's the brand?
Yes, sir.
Let's see. You may want to bring a jacket next time. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. You'll remain seated. Counsel, when you're ready, approach.
Your Honor, E81 is present.
Please be seated. Good morning. And you are going to be continue to be referred to as Juror E81. And the attorneys are going to have an opportunity to question you about the jury questionnaire you filled out Monday morning. And we're going to begin with Mr. De La Ronda. You may proceed.
I guess it's still morning. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
You mentioned in your questionnaire, and I want to make sure I've got this right, what I was able to read here. In terms of what you heard, you stated almost everything published in the Orlando Sentinel and by Central Florida News 13. Did I get that right?
Yes.
So those are your two sources in terms of what you heard or read in the paper about this?
That's right.
Okay. I want to ask you some questions regarding that. Because you stated, if I recall correctly, that you had formed an opinion, but you still set it aside. Do I have that right?
Yes.
Okay. Let's get to the heart of the matter first. Your opinion that you formed, what was it?
That George Zimmerman should go home.
That he, in other words, so you believe he's innocent?
I do.
Okay. Now, despite that, you said you can set that aside?
If there was evidence that proved to me that he did indeed commit a crime, I mean, I think he was just defending himself.
Okay. And you came to that conclusion just based on what you saw in the media, correct?
Yes,
Okay. And so as a result, you believe he's innocent?
I do.
And you understand, and you think you're leaning that way right now, right? Or you're not leaning, you actually believe it, as you stated, he's innocent.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes,
Okay, and that's based on what you saw on TV and read in the newspaper.
right.
Okay. And I gather, did you listen to other people commenting about it too?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and did that help in formulating your opinion that you believe he's innocent?
Well, people are going to say what they want.
Right.
You know, you think what you feel is right.
And you came to that belief as a result of what you saw on TV and read in the newspaper. If you could tell me what were some of the reasons why you came to that conclusion that he was innocent?
The injuries that George had.
Okay, tell me about the injuries as best you can.
Well, I know that he had a bloody nose. I know that his head was cut in different places. And I also know that Trayvon really wasn't beat up like that. I know that he was learning how to be a street fighter.
And who was learning how to be a street fighter?
Trayvon was.
And where did you come to that conclusion?
Just from the news.
What news do you remember specifically saying that Trayvon was learning to be a street fighter?
Well, nobody directly said that. It was just pictures that they'd shown.
Which pictures did you see?
I saw pictures of him refereeing a fight.
You did?
Yes.
Okay. and
Well,
you-
that's what it appeared to be, and
How did you know it was him?
because he was identified in the picture.
Who identified him?
Whoever, I'm not sure who identified him.
Was it somebody commenting about it? In other words, like an attorney? Or was there an attorney commenting about it?
Whoever was talking about it on TV, probably a news commentator.
Okay, so you saw a video that alleged that...
No, I didn't see a video.
Oh, okay. So
It was pictures.
So there was pictures of two individuals having a fight?
No, there were, it looked like 3 people in the picture. It looked like 2 people were getting ready to fight, and there was a person in between them, maybe off to the side a little bit, you know, getting ready
Sure.
to pull them together
Right.
to fight.
And then the commentator said that that was Trayvon Martin.
Yes.
Okay. And do you recall the commentator's name that said that?
No, I don't.
Was it a TV commentator, or was it like a so-called expert or lawyer or somebody else that was
It
not
was
a newscaster?
It was someone on TV.
Okay, somebody that
I'm
they
not
were
exactly sure who it was.
Okay. Was it somebody that they were interviewing, in other words?
I'd seen Mark Meejane being interviewed.
Okay. He's an attorney in town, as a commentator.
Yeah.
He was the one that was commenting about it?
He was interviewed on Channel 13
Okay.
off and on.
And
And I don't know if it was him that said that or not.
Okay, but somebody like that, a commentator, was saying that this was a fight involving individuals and that was Trayvon Martin.
It was either a
from-
newscaster or someone they had on that they were talking with.
Okay, all right. And in terms of, I apologize, you were still going. You were telling me about the bloody nose, and then you said something about his head, right?
Yeah, and there was blood on his clothing. And
Okay. Now, what blood did you see on, I'm assuming you're talking about Mr. Zimmerman's clothing?
yes.
Okay, where was the blood on his clothing that you saw?
I think I remember seeing some on the back of his collar and down the back of his shirt.
Do you recall what that attire, what would it look like? What was it?
No, I don't. I remember I think it was something that had a collar, but other than that, I don't recall.
And was that a video or a photograph you saw of him?
A photograph, I believe.
And was that recently or at the time back in February when this crime occurred?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay, all right. Tell me what else you saw that caused you to arrive at your decision that George Zimmerman is innocent?
Well, I'm aware of the fact that Trayvon had been smoking marijuana.
And how did you learn that?
From TV.
Okay.
And
Was that a commentator too, or was that a report, or?
It could have been in the newspaper also, either one of those places. And that there were pictures on his phone of him smoking, and that was on TV. And there was also a picture of a gun
Okay.
that was taken off of his cell phone too.
Wow.
And that tells me that smoking pot, getting involved in guns, learning how to street fight. I mean, I know his family loved him. I know they did. And I think that he probably had just started getting in with a wrong crowd, and his family wasn't aware of it. And, he was going down the wrong path. And things were just escalating for that young man in a bad way.
So you felt it really wasn't his parents' fault, that he just kind of went that way, Trayvon Martin, in other words, that he decided to get into street fighting, decided to start carrying a gun, I guess, right?
Well, I don't know that he was carrying a gun.
Well, you mentioned that he had a gun.
I mentioned that there was a picture of a gun on his phone.
On his phone.
So that's an indicator that he's interested.
Sure. And you believe that was him holding the gun?
No, I don't know that for a
Oh, okay.
fact.
Well then, how did that impact you in terms of saying that he was the one that was involved in obviously getting into this incident with Mr. Zimmerman, and Zimmerman is innocent?
Well, if the boy is smoking pot, he's interested in guns, he's learning how to fight, he's going down the wrong path, then it seems to me that, he's just looking for a reason to fight, and he's confronted by someone who's trying to protect their neighborhood, who's just watching out for, somebody who looks suspicious.
Okay.
And the boy is confronted, and, he's already got drugs in his system, or he could have been high even then,
Right.
and he got aggressive.
Did you believe he also, Trayvon Martin, was carrying a gun that night?
No, I don't think he was carrying a gun that night, because I think if he was, then everyone would have known that by now.
Oh, okay. And what other things caused you to come to your conclusion that, or opinion that George Zimmerman is innocent?
Well, I think George was just trying to protect his neighborhood. He saw something out of place. He called the police. He confronted the boy. Or maybe, maybe he did not. I think that the boy saw George watching him, and I'm not sure if the boy confronted George or not. I'm not sure about that.
So you believe it may have been Trayvon Martin that went and confronted George Zimmerman?
It's a possibility. I don't know that for
Now, I
sure.
gather you did not know, you kept referring to him as George Zimmerman is who you're talking about, right?
Right.
You didn't know him prior to this? I'm
No.
assuming. Okay. What else have you heard regarding, what else caused you to arrive at your conclusion that Mr. Zimmerman is innocent?
Basically what I told you.
Okay, anything else?
No.
Is there anything that you saw that made you believe that maybe he's guilty?
No.
Okay, nothing?
No.
Okay, what else did you hear about George Zimmerman, if anything?
That's basically
Okay.
it, really.
Did you watch any of the court proceedings?
Yes, I did.
Okay, were you one of those individuals that you know, kind of catches on or latches onto a case and kind of follows the case and is interested?
No,
Okay. And how did it come about that you watched the court proceedings?
because I knew that I had received the jury summons.
Oh, okay, so you got the jury summons and you decided, let me watch to see what's going on so I know what the heck was going on, right?
Yeah,
Okay,
pretty
that's
much.
fine, that's a normal thing that somebody might do.
Yeah.
So you got the summons about 3 or 4 weeks ago, then you said, let me pay attention to what's going on in court. In
Yeah.
case I'm asked something, I can say, I know something about the case, right?
Otherwise, this is not the type of thing that I would really pay attention to on a
Gotcha.
daily basis.
So in terms of the opinion that you came to, was that at the beginning or was that recently after you got further immersed into the case?
No, it was right away.
Okay, so
I
you're.
felt that right away.
And would you agree that those opinions that we form at the beginning are usually the opinions that we stick to throughout?
Unless there's evidence that changes your mind,
Right? I
then,
mean,
you know,
it's kind of hard to erase when.
I'm sorry, Your Honor. I was trying to write down what she was saying, and I didn't think she was done.
I apologize, I thought she was. Did I interrupt you, ma'am? Were you done?
no, I'm done.
She was done? So those opinions that you formulate at the beginning, those are usually the lasting opinions, would you agree?
Yeah, I usually,
Right.
unless there's something that you don't know about that comes forth.
Now, what happens if the opinions we come to, or you came to, in life, are based on stuff that's not true? What do you do that? How do you erase that from your mind? Do you think it's possible to erase it from your mind?
No, you don't erase it from your mind. You just, I consider myself better educated.
Sure.
You know, I've been educated in the truth.
Okay. But you're not just, you didn't have the opinion, you were pretty adamant about your opinion. I mean, it's pretty firm is what I'm trying to say,
Yes,
right?
my opinion is
Would you
pretty
agree?
firm. It
I mean,
is
it's
firm.
not like you're like on the fence, you're like.
Unless something is shown to me that erases all doubt from my mind, then my mind is made up.
Your mind is made up, wouldn't you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. Now, any other aspects of the case that you think are important in letting us know in terms of helping you formulate your opinion, or anything about the case itself that you think is important for us to know? Both sides.
I don't know. I can't
Okay.
think.
What did you think, you mentioned that Trayvon Martin, what else did you learn about Trayvon Martin from the news? Anything else you can recall?
I know that his mom loved him a great deal.
Okay.
I mean, she took him skiing, horseback riding.
Right.
She was active in his life, and they were a family unit, but his father wasn't present,
Okay.
which is hard for a boy.
Sure. Did you think that was a reason why he, in your opinion, turned out the way he did?
I grew up without a father.
Okay. So
So
you didn't hold
I
that.
think that has a lot to do, you know, when a boy is growing up, he needs that influence.
Sure. So you felt that may in some way have impacted, in your opinion, why he turned out the way he did? You mentioned a gun and smoking and et cetera.
Yeah, I think that had something to do
Sure.
with it. If his dad was there or if a male
Sure.
figure was there on a regular basis, I think that he may not have gotten involved with other boys that led him astray.
How did you come to that conclusion that his father was not there on a regular basis? Where did you arrive at that fact?
Well, the picture that was out of Trayvon the most that I remember seeing is him of 12 years old. And then other pictures started coming out, and I had learned that these were pictures that his mother provided an attorney, I think, from his memorial service. And I remember hearing that his father was asked for recent pictures, and he said he didn't have any.
And you saw that on TV or read about it in the paper?
I think I saw that on TV.
Okay. And who said that on TV?
Oh, I don't know.
Was it a
It
commentator?
was Channel 13.
Okay, all right. Somebody on Channel 13.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, when you were listening, I'm sorry, when you were looking at the case, you were following both sides of it? In other words, you weren't just focusing on Trayvon Martin, I'm assuming, or were you?
No, I look at both
Okay.
sides.
You were looking at George Zimmerman too? Or were you? You mentioned the injuries to George Zimmerman. Anything else you remember reading or watching on TV about that said anything about George Zimmerman? Other than what you've said already?
That he was very upset, probably anxious that he had gained some weight, and you know, you either gain weight or lose weight
Sure.
when you're very upset.
Anything else that you remember about George Zimmerman in terms of from the time that this happened back in February till now that you read about in the paper or saw on TV?
That his family or he were trying to raise money for his defense.
Okay.
And that's about it, really.
Okay. You don't remember anything else? Because you mentioned you watched court proceedings. You don't remember anything about the court proceedings?
No, I'd have the TV on while I'm working around the house and doing things that's kind of background noise.
Sure. Okay.
So-
Well, I guess my question to you is, how come you have specific recollections about Trayvon Martin, but not that specific recollection about George Zimmerman? Is it because you already made up your mind in terms of that you felt Trayvon Martin was in the wrong and George Zimmerman was in the
Well,
right?
there was a lot more personal information put out about Trayvon than I think there was about George.
Is that what you believe based on what you saw?
Yeah.
Okay. And that personal information that was put out, I'm assuming was all of that just based on TV as opposed to the internet?
I don't get my news from the internet.
Okay. You didn't do any research on the case?
No. I check my email, I might look at the AOL homepage, there's not a
Okay.
whole lot
Okay.
on there.
I gather I know you recently obviously found out, and then you did some more work, or you started paying attention. When you found out you got the summons, you started paying attention, right?
Yeah, when
Okay,
I...
tell me about that, what you did about that.
Well, I heard the judge say that the jury was not going to be sequestered.
Was not going to be sequestered, okay?
Yes, and I sighed with relief.
So,
And then the paper that I filled out said, if sequestered, there, I saw the word sequestered in there, and the walls in the room, that big room, the walls started to close in, and, you know, I just want to sleep in my own bed at night.
I neglected to ask you about that because I can barely read it. It's not that you didn't write it legible, it's just that my copy, the one that copied it, wasn't that legible. But I think you stated no, but then you threw out, you put in some language there in terms of you may have some issues with being
Yeah,
sequestered.
it makes me feel a little anxious. This whole case, for me personally, makes me feel anxious if I were to be a juror.
So in an ideal world, you would not want to be on this jury, I gather?
That's correct.
Okay. And is that because of everything you've already expressed already, and also possibility in addition to that, that you may be sequestered?
Well, I would like to say that I think no matter what the outcome is with this, there's going to be somebody that's not going to be happy.
Okay.
There's going to be groups out there that aren't going to be happy, and I feel like I'm going to walk out of here with a bullseye on my back.
So you feel, in your opinion, that you might be a target and you would rather not serve on the jury because of that, is that correct?
That's correct.
Is that true?
I just said that's
Okay,
correct.
I apologize.
That's
I
okay.
wasn't listening to your answer. Please accept my apologies. So would you agree that you would not, you really couldn't be fair?
If I was chosen for this, which I really do not want to be, if I didn't have a choice and I had to be here, I would listen to everything and look at everything presented. And if you can change my mind, then that would be okay. But I believe that every American has a right to defend themselves, has a right if they're not mentally ill, if they don't have felony convictions, if they have nothing to prevent them from carrying a weapon. I think the more people armed, the better, because
Okay.
there's a lot of crime out there.
Yes, ma'am.
And when people are armed, then it just prevents so much.
So you believe in, as I do, in the Second Amendment right to bear arms,
Absolutely,
right? And you believe
absolutely.
strongly in that.
Absolutely,
Okay.
I
Are there
do.
individuals that maybe, even though they have the right to bear arms, sometimes should not?
Yes,
use a gun?
that is true.
Tell me some examples of those type of cases.
As long as we're clear that we're entering this realm, because we haven't before, this is
We're-
beyond publicity.
We're going beyond the free trial.
I'll limit it to that, and she brought it up, so I'll be glad to stop
If
at
you
this time.
can.
The bottom line is, ma'am, isn't it, can you say without a doubt that you can set aside the opinions that you currently have and the knowledge you think you have heard about the case? Can you set those aside?
Yes,
You
if
think
I,
you can?
if I hear evidence that can definitely change my mind, then yeah,
What kind of evidence would you expect to hear that would change your mind?
I don't know.
Well, you've come in already with an opinion, correct?
Yes,
Okay. But yet you put that you believe you can set that aside. I think is what you said, unless I misread.
yes, well, you know, I try to be a fair person, you know?
But haven't you kind of made up your mind already?
From everything that I've seen and heard, yes.
And isn't it true that it'd really be difficult for you to change your opinion?
You'd have to work really hard to change my opinion.
I mean, we're being honest here, right? I would have
Yes.
to be like,
Yes.
I would have to work magic to change your opinion, would you agree?
If you feel that it would be magic, then
I
okay.
mean, I would have to go beyond the norm, right?
I don't know what the norm would be
At
here.
this point, I understand the need for this inquiry, but it is challenging the juror as though she knows what she
I would
doesn't
like
know.
counsel to approach the bench, please.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
The opinion that you have, is it based on a combination of things in terms of the right to bear arms and then the evidence as you understand it, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And the need for people to keep our city safe or our community safe in terms of there are people out there committing crimes and we need people like George Zimmerman out there to protect the community. Is that your belief?
Yes, I do believe that. George, from what I understand, had a concealed carry permit, so he was legal and lawful in having his weapon.
So would it not be true then that your opinion, which you stated, and I appreciate you being honest, was not just based on the media, but also on a firm belief that you had going in terms of people protecting the community, that kind of stuff, and not wanting outsiders to intentionally commit crimes?
We have police officers that live in our communities. They're all over the place. Walk out the building. They're all around. They're here to keep us safe. When they're off duty, some of them carry their weapons with them. I feel safe knowing that there are people around, even if I don't see it. I like knowing that there are people around that have weapons.
Right. I guess my question is that factored into your coming to your opinion too?
Yes.
You automatically take the side of somebody who is carrying a firearm if he legally has the right to do so,
Right.
right? I mean, would that be, would you agree with that?
Basically, yes.
Okay. Now, you shared this opinion, I'm assuming, with other people too, when you discussed the case?
Well, I live with a retired police officer.
And I gather you talked to him about it.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, did he
It's
agree
my
with you?
husband. We talk.
Did he agree with you about what your feelings are? Did he support your opinion or did he concur with it?
What does that matter? It's my opinion.
Well, I'm just curious as to whether you shared your opinion or how you formulated your opinion. Did he assist you in formulating your opinion? In other
No,
words-
this is my opinion.
Yes,
It's
ma'am.
not someone else's, it's mine.
No, I understand, but when you discussed it with him, did you have to persuade him to come to your side in terms of your opinion, or did he automatically agree with you?
Oh, no, I'm sure that there are quite a few like-minded people.
Okay, so who else did you share this opinion with?
Well, I talk with my family.
Okay, and did they all concur with your opinion?
No, not everyone.
Okay, who disagreed with you?
Why does that matter?
You don't have to name who it is, just was it a uncle, aunt, son, daughter, you know, who disagreed with you?
Oh, there are a few females
Okay,
that don't
and
feel the way I feel.
Why did they disagree with you?
They just think differently than I do.
And-
And that's okay.
Sure. And did you discuss this with them?
No, it's not something that you really just, if you know somebody doesn't think the way you do, you kind of keep it to a minimum.
Okay. So in other words, you did not, when you were talking to them, I know the discussion was limited, you didn't try to persuade them or keep an open mind. You automatically realized that they had a different opinion and that's their opinion and you have your opinion.
Yeah, there are some people that just aren't going to think the way I think,
Right.
and I'm okay with that.
But you didn't try to persuade them or?
Oh, no,
Okay.
no.
Did you try to listen to their opinion and maybe they could persuade you of their opinion and maybe their opinion was correct?
Well, there again, my opinion's pretty set, and if you try to persuade me differently, you're going to have to really prove to me that you've got a good case.
Right, so even when you have family members who disagreed with you, you didn't even want to listen to their opinion because your opinion is pretty set.
No, I listen to what people have to say, but your mind is made up.
And you would agree that your mind is made up.
When it comes to carrying a weapon legally, yeah, my mind is made up with that.
And as a result, your also mind is made up in this case.
Well, he was carrying his weapon legally.
So your mind is made up that he's innocent.
I don't know everything. If you can prove to me differently, then do it.
Okay. Did you have any discussions with your husband, and again, I wouldn't mention what his position is, but you mentioned what it was, about coming to court and being a juror?
Of course,
Okay.
yes.
And did he tell you in terms of that you were going to be asked these kind of questions?
No, he did not.
Okay. Now, I'm not saying that's
He did
improper.
not.
We all live in this great country and people are entitled to, and let me make sure you understand my question. I'm not talking about after Monday. I'm talking prior to Monday. I know you have followed, I'm
Right.
assuming, the
Yes.
court's admonitions.
Yes.
I'm not trying to say that you didn't. I'm talking about
I
prior to
followed what the
Monday.
judge asked me to.
Yes, I'm talking about prior to Monday.
Mhm.
You got the summons. You mentioned that you started getting more informed about the case, correct? Did I understand you
I
correctly?
tried, yeah.
Right, and what you did is you went on the internet, or I'm sorry. you didn't
No,
go-
I did not go on the internet.
Where did you go to get more information?
I told you, the Sentinel and Channel 13.
And what do you recall at that time, what other further information did you obtain between the time you got your summons and now? What did you learn about
Just-
the case?
Just what, the proceedings off and on
What-
that happened
Do you
here.
recall what the proceedings were about?
A lot of it was about the jury, I think, about
Do you-
whether they were going to be sequestered or not.
Okay. Anything else, any other proceedings that you recall?
Not that I recall at the moment.
Okay. You mentioned you discussed with your husband coming, having jury service because he was home, right? And
Right.
what did he tell you about jury service?
He did not tell me anything.
You had-
We did not talk about
Okay,
this.
okay, all right. What other, other than family members, have you discussed this case with friends too?
No,
Okay.
no.
About,
Well, I
cohort?
told one friend last night on the phone that, that I was going for jury duty, and then I said, I can't say anymore, and I handed the phone to my husband and left the room.
Sure, okay. Now, I gather when you first heard about the case, you read about it, or I'm sorry, you saw it on TV, and you read about it in the paper, you came to the conclusion that Mr. Zimmerman was innocent, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Did you do anything in furtherance of that? Did you contribute in any way to, if there was anything that can't, in other words, any signing of petitions to free him or to claim his innocence or money or anything like that?
No,
Why not?
I don't know. It just, there was never anything presented to me, and I knew that he was raising money, and at the very beginning, I thought, gee, maybe I should send but I did not.
Okay.
And the reason,
I don't know, I just didn't.
okay, sure. And the reason is because people could do it anonymously, so I'm just trying to find out if you did or not.
I did not.
Okay. Did you look up any of the websites dedicated to his cause?
No, I did not.
Okay. Did you look up any of the websites that, like if a law firm representing him has a website, did you look at any of that stuff?
No, I did not.
Did you look at any of the websites dedicated to Trayvon Martin or his family?
No, I did not.
Okay, and was that on purpose?
No, it's just not something I would normally do.
So in other words, your conclusions or opinion in this case was just limited to the media aspect of it, the TV and the newspaper?
Yes.
Okay. Did you in any way think that either one of those, the media, I think you said what channel, right? You said what TV channel?
Channel 13.
Channel 13, or the Orlando Sentinel was biased one way or the other for or against Mr. Zimmerman?
I never felt that, that there was bias there. I feel that Channel 13 is biased when it comes to government type of reporting, but I didn't pick any of that up with this.
Now, ma'am, the issue of if the court were to consider possibly sequestering that to you would be a definitely you could not do that, is that correct?
That's correct. Well, I would not be happy about that.
Okay. And your reasons are, and I don't mean to get into personal matters, but you have like work or kids or something that would prevent you from doing that?
No.
Okay, and you just don't
I just-
believe in spending the night somewhere else, is that correct?
Right. I
You
want
feel
to be,
uncomfortable with that?
I'm very uncomfortable with that.
Okay, and that would impact you being able to function as you normally do, would that be correct?
Well, I would feel very anxious about that.
Because we talked about, we don't know exactly whether it may be 4 to 6 weeks. You don't think you can do that, right?
I really would rather not.
Is there anything else that you think the state should know? I know Mr. Romero or Mr. West, I believe it's Mr. Romero, will be having an opportunity to ask you questions. Is there anything else you need that we should know in terms of being fair?
Not that I know of.
Okay. So the bottom line is here, I would have to go through many hoops, not just prove beyond a reasonable doubt, in terms of proving this defendant guilty, correct?
You used the word magic.
I would need to do that.
I would need to see proof.
Okay. And what would you consider proof?
I don't know.
Secretary can ask before you.
It's the same.
Now, you've heard certain things, such as you mentioned a gun, right? That you saw a picture, I think you said, that was attributed to Trayvon Martin, right?
From his cell phone.
And what happens if that evidence never comes into evidence? If, number one, that isn't true, somebody else's gun, or somebody else's picture, how would that factor into your decision here?
It's just not part of the case.
Okay, so you could just automatically disregard it and that would be erased from your mind?
It would not be erased from my mind,
Okay.
but it would not be part of the case
Okay.
at that point.
All right. Now, what happens if you also found out that Trayvon Martin was not in any, joining any fight or was in any fight club or whatever you described? What happens if that's not true either?
Then it's not part of the case.
Okay. What happens if that video that you saw wasn't Trayvon Martin at all, refereeing it?
I don't remember a video, I just saw
I'm
a
sorry,
picture.
photographs. I apologize, photographs. What happens if that's not Trayvon Martin there at all?
Then he's not in the picture.
Okay. And but you can still be of the opinion that he's innocent, right? That George Zimmerman is innocent.
I believe he's a man who was defending himself.
Okay. What happens if the evidence showed the contrary, that he wasn't defending himself, that he's the one that attacked Trayvon Martin?
Then that's what the truth is.
And so you would find him guilty?
If that's the truth.
You would vote that he's guilty, even though he had a gun and he lawfully had a gun. If he's the one that attacked Trayvon Martin, you would find him guilty?
If you can
Well,
prove
I-
that that's the truth.
I'm concerned that he seems
What
to...
is your speaking objection?
I'm sorry, the
Non-speaking
non-speaking
objection.
objection is that he's mischaracterizing the law and then asking this juror to assent to it.
Sustained.
Further questions?
Thank you very much, Mr. O'Meara.
Yes, thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
You want a few minutes?
I'm okay.
You okay? Purpose of what we're doing here today, right now, this is only a small portion of what we call jury selection, voir dire. And it's very limited. We'll have another opportunity to talk to you maybe another day. Today is to find out primarily what you know about and how, where you knew it from, and then what impact that would have on you. So I want to spend some time with that, and then I'm going to go into some of the issues that you brought up, okay? So as we talk about that, I do want you to focus on sort of what you heard and where you heard it from, all right? Now, you said that your main sources are Channel 13, is that correct?
Correct.
And the Orlando Sentinel, right?
Right.
Do you read the Sentinel every day?
Wednesday through Sunday.
Okay. Not the first couple of days of the week?
Right.
Okay. And Channel 13, is that your default station?
It is. When my TV goes on, that's the channel that comes up.
Yet another Bright House customer then, I imagine.
I'm a Danny Trainer fan.
Oh, okay. Been around a long, long time.
Mhm.
As this happened back in February 2012, and I think that you said that you had found out some information about this case early on, correct?
Correct.
And were those sources the same, Channel 13 and the Orlando Sentinel?
Yes.
When you first found out about this, did this case trigger something in you that made you really focus on it, or was this just a news event that you were listening to?
It was a news event that I was listening to, and my reaction was, "Oh my God, that's so sad
What do you mean that's so sad?
that someone died."
That Trayvon Martin passed? Okay. Was your knowledge then limited to Channel 13 and the Orlando Sentinel? So your
Pretty
sources?
much, yeah.
And your husband's a former cop?
Yes.
Did you speak to him back in March, April 2012 when this started? Did you have a lot of conversations with him about this?
No, this was not, like a big part of our life.
Okay.
It's like any other news story. You kind of watch it and move on to the next story.
Did you focus on this case, for example, any more than when we heard about the Boston Marathon bombing?
No, I did not focus on this any more than
Okay.
I would have anything else.
Or the tragedy in the kindergarten up in the Northeast where the children were killed?
These things are all so tragic that I really, I don't want to focus on them.
Okay. So you did not specifically focus on this case any more than any other, what you call a tragedy?
Correct.
Okay. And you also mentioned in response to Mr. DeLeon's questions that you would at least listen to other people when they would talk about this?
Yes.
And was that on the media or just friends of yours or?
Media,
Okay.
basically. I mean, if it came up at a family gathering or something, it's like anything else. You just move on.
Okay. Mr. DeLeon asked you, I guess if you had an initial impression or opinion concerning this event, and I think that you said you did. Is that correct?
Yes.
And in part, that was based upon the fact that, from your understanding of the facts, you didn't think that George Zimmerman had done anything wrong. Would that be accurate?
Well, someone is shot and someone died. That's never a good thing. However, I do think that George was protecting himself.
Okay. And does that come from any predisposition that you bring into the case, or does that come from what you know from the media?
Well, from what I believe, even before the case, is I believe strongly in the Castle Doctrine here in Florida, and I think that's a good thing. I think that you should be able to defend yourself out in public.
So when you heard that George, in your interpretation of the reports, when you interpreted it to be that George was defending himself, then you think that his action in defending himself was okay? Would that be accurate?
If he felt that his life was in danger
Mhm.
and he took that action, then I agree with that.
Okay. One of the questions that I'm going to ask you as we go through this, maybe a couple of times, is this. You believe that it's okay for someone to defend themselves if they think they're in danger. Is that what you just said?
If they think their life is in danger, then absolutely.
Okay. Let's just say that that's your belief. But let's just say that you're a person on this jury and the judge gives you an instruction that is different than that. The judge gives you just a different instruction. I'm not going to even suggest it. I just want to say that it's different than the belief that you come here with. Can you follow the judge's instruction on what the law is and how you should apply it?
I will do that to the best of my ability.
Okay. Do you think that ability would be impacted in a negative way by your thoughts that were different from the law, or would you be able to accept her interpretation and application of the law?
I would try to do what the judge is asking me to do.
Okay. And Mr. Del Riondo also asked you then if your opinion was such that you would make him perform magic.
He's the one who used that word, not me.
That's why I said it was his word and not yours. Do you have an understanding in our criminal justice system that a citizen accused is presumed innocent?
Yes, I do.
Do you think that's appropriate?
Not in all cases.
Okay. Tell me what you mean by that.
Well, there are, when you're arrested, the law is that you should be assumed innocent until you're proven guilty. If the evidence is beyond doubt that you're guilty, then you're guilty.
Okay. You're okay with the premise, though, that it's the state of burden to prove guilt and that it's not Mr. Zimmerman's burden to prove anything?
Yes.
The form of the question, incorrect statement of the law.
Sustained.
I'll move on without arguing whether or not that's the correct interpretation, but okay, I'll move on. Do you agree, do you have any problem with the concept, with this idea that you think Mr. Zimmerman might be innocent and Mr. DeLeon is concerned that he has to perform magic? Do you have any concern with the state having to carry the burden of proving Mr. Zimmerman's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt?
Well, the truth is the truth. There's no magic to it.
If Mr. Del Riondo, the state, was able to convince you, present evidence to you that contradicts what you think happened, what would you do?
If he can prove to me that it's the truth, then I would accept that.
So let's say that you think that the evidence supports, I'll make something up,
Okay.
that there was a red car involved. Okay? That's what you think happened. You maybe even seen a picture of it. Yet the evidence comes out to show that it's actually a blue car. Okay? You think it's a red car, evidence shows it's a blue car. Which one do you follow?
The one that can be proved.
The one that's proven in evidence, or what you thought it might have been before you got here?
The one that's proven in evidence.
Okay. So would you agree with the concept that whatever you heard outside this courtroom, particularly concerning the facts of the case, has to stay outside the courtroom?
Well, I understand that some things that I may have heard are just people talking.
Okay. Well, let me ask you something specifically. You saw a photograph that gave you the impression that Trayvon Martin was refereeing a fight, correct?
Yes.
Let's just say that that photograph, anything about Trayvon Martin and fighting, let's just say that that doesn't come into evidence. At the end of the case, the judge is going to say to you, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I'm paraphrasing, I'm going to try and get it close. You've now heard all the evidence. There is no other evidence. You now will decide this evidence only on the facts that came into this courtroom. And nothing that you didn't hear in this courtroom is to be considered. Can you follow that instruction?
Yes.
So, though, as you said to a question posed to you by Mr. De Leon, that you wouldn't erase the memory, can you decide not to consider that memory in coming up with a lawful verdict?
Yes.
Any concern
just-
with being able? I cut you off, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I understand that if it's not presented here, then it's not evidence.
Though we appreciate that you have been very honest in telling us what you know about the case, and you've told us that you have a familiarity with a number of the facts, right? I mean, you know some of it.
What I've read or heard on TV, I don't know if that's everything. It could be far from everything. I don't know that.
And maybe that's the point. Do you acknowledge that what you've heard is at best incomplete?
I acknowledge that.
Do you acknowledge that what you've heard on TV may well be slanted by those who spoke it, like Channel 13 and the Atlanta Center?
Yes, I understand that could be true.
So, though you have I'm going to call it a working knowledge of some of what went on here, do you agree, can you agree, that that's going to be left aside and outside the courtroom, and that you'll only decide on the facts of the case that you hear here?
Yes.
And that you won't let any predispositions about guilt or innocence or facts invade you acting as an impartial juror?
Yes.
You certain?
I'm reasonably certain, yes.
Okay. Let's just say, for example, that you're now on the jury, we've heard the case, you're now deliberating, and some other juror says to you, you know, I remember something. I think that Trayvon Martin guy, I think he was a fighter, or I think he was this, or whatever it might be. But you know that that never came into the courtroom, that there was no evidence to support that. But some juror thinks they remember something from the Atlanta Sentinel or from wherever. Would you be able to say to that juror that they're not supposed to consider that and that you're not going to?
Yes. If it's not presented as evidence, then it has no place.
another example. Just because part of this is we don't want jurors who live under rocks to come in and hear this case. We don't want jurors who have any particular connection to one side or the other. If you were George Zimmerman's cousin, you wouldn't be an appropriate juror because some biases we don't even want to ask you to get around. But right now, what we want to make sure is that what you heard on the outside, one, that it hasn't been this focus of yours. So has this case been a real focus of yours? Or just one of the tragic events that you've learned about and found out about over the past 16 months?
It's not been a focus of mine, but I do have to say that since I received the summons, I probably listened to Channel 13 more than I normally would have.
Okay. Same question then, to the extent that you've paid some more attention to this case in the past 4, 5, 6 weeks, whatever you may have heard in the past 6 weeks, can you also agree not to consider that unless you hear it in the courtroom?
Yes.
Any concern with being able to leave what's outside the courtroom and only listen to what is presented through witnesses here in the courtroom?
I don't really have any concerns about that. I
Okay.
mean, not that I can think of at the moment.
You had stated I'm going to call it a predisposition that people are allowed to protect themselves. Is that your belief?
Yes.
And also that they're allowed to carry weapons.
Lawfully.
Correct. Lawfully. Is that, tell me, do you think that that predisposition by you is going to lead you more in favor of George Zimmerman or opposed to Trayvon Martin, or is that just a belief that you have?
It's just a belief that I have. I think every American has that right.
Okay. To do it lawfully.
Yes.
If, for example, and again I'm going to make up a fact here, if, for example, you were to find out that for some reason George Zimmerman was not supposed to have a weapon, that he was not lawfully carrying a weapon, and the judge said that's a problem, would you consider that a problem too?
I would consider that a problem.
Okay. So you'll follow the judge's instructions, correct?
Yes.
And though you may have a predisposition that people are allowed to arm themselves, is your belief that that should only be done lawfully?
Yes.
And that you would hold people to the responsibility that they have in lawfully carrying their weapons?
Absolutely.
And in lawfully using them?
Yes.
And if he wasn't lawfully using it, would you hold him responsible for that as well?
Well, if you're not supposed to be carrying a weapon and you're using it, then you're basically a criminal.
Mr. De Leon said a few different times that you have your mind made up. Is your mind, first of all, do you believe that your mind is made up on the ultimate issue of this case as to whether or not George Zimmerman is guilty or innocent? Guilty or not guilty?
I don't know all the facts. I don't know what the truth is. I know right now what I told you.
Right, right. And I think you said to Mr. De Leon that if he's going to convince you of guilt, he's going to have to prove guilt to you. Is that accurate?
That's accurate.
And if he doesn't prove guilt to you, then he hasn't carried his burden. Is that also accurate?
Yes, it is.
The judge is going to tell you in your jury instructions that the state has to prove guilt by a term that we're not going to define here for you today, but it's called beyond a reasonable doubt. Whatever that is defined as by the court, she's going to give you that definition. Will you agree to hold to the state to that burden, whatever the judge says it is?
Yes.
Would you agree not to hold the state to any higher burden than what the judge tells you it is?
Yes.
On your questionnaire, I believe you had stated that you did have an opinion about the case, which we've spent some time talking about. Correct.
Yes.
But you also stated that, can you put aside your opinion and render a verdict based only on the evidence and law presented in this trial? Is that still your belief that you can do that?
I believe I can do that.
I might just have a moment, Your Honor. The last issue was the one that Mr. De Leon talked about at the end. And that's the concept of your obligation as a juror. Obviously, you've come here and sat with us now for almost an hour to talk about whether or not you can sit as a juror. The other part is the obligation to do that and the impact that that has on you and your life. So I want to talk to you about that for just a couple minutes. One, you know, it's a publicized matter that we're talking about here today, which is why we're talking to you. And that it also may take several weeks for us to take care of this case. And that if you're a juror, you'll be with us for those several weeks. Is there anything in your life, and we'll talk about sequestration in a minute, but anything in your life that would prohibit you from being with us for the next several weeks if you were selected as a juror?
No, there's not.
Okay.
I wish there was.
Though, but you are being honest that there's not.
Yes.
Okay. Now let's talk about the sequestration. Because of the publicity of the case, there may come a need, and we haven't decided this yet, but there may come a need to be so certain that outside influences don't impact on our jury that we keep you secure. And you're not spending the night in your own bed, as I think you had said it, for as long as we need you for the trial and deliberations. It's not, the judge will have some, if it happens, the judge will come up with some rules, and there'll be contact with family members and whatnot. It's not, but it's an imposition. If you were picked as a juror, and further, if you were told that you will be sequestered, that we need to secure you as jurors to make sure that your work here is done right, I guess, is done in a way that protects the process. Is that something that you would be able to do if asked to do by the court?
I could do that if I was asked to do it. I really don't want to be separated from my husband.
Sure.
I really want to be in my own home. And I'm worried about my privacy after the trial.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I've heard that everybody's entitled to their 15 minutes of fame. I'd rather my 15 minutes be because I won the lottery and not because of this.
Right. But if called upon, if you had asked me if I want to spend 4 weeks not living at my house, I would say no. I don't think anyone would actually want to, unless I could pick the place, like Europe. But short of that, nobody wants to just up and interfere with their lives for a few weeks. But the question is, if you are asked to, if we say, you came here because you were summoned, You answered the questions because we asked you to. And now we've picked you as a juror, and you have to spend some time away from home in order to properly discharge this duty. Is what you're saying to me is that you can do it, though you'd rather not?
Again, yes.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. You'll remain seated. Council approach when you're ready. Grace. Court will be in recess until 1 o'clock.